Viewpoint. Point of view is one of the basic fundamental tools in any writer's toolkit. Control of perspective. Who is whose eyes are we seeing the story from? Whose ears are we hearing it from? Who are we writing with? Now, the simple version of this, too simple, is that there's first person. We all know that there's a first person narrator who's a character in the story who's telling the story, and we will see one first person narrator in our core four, and third person, which tells a story about someone else. Third person can go a lot of different ways. It can be very, very close to the point of view character, third person limited. It can stand way back and be omniscient. It can move back and forth between close and remote and various things like that. It has a lot of tools, and it's it's wonderful to exploit, and it's easy for amateurs to mess up. Something you might notice in our core 4 is that the two older writers, the ones who came of age as artists much earlier, kind of who were fully formed writers before 1970, play fast and loose with point of view, do kind of do less predictable things with viewpoint than the younger writers who started to thrive in the 21st century. There's a two-part explanation for this, and it's partly about teaching creative writing in the workshop system. Le Guin and Tolkien was never in a creative writing class in his entire life. The first time Le Guin walked into one, she was the teacher. What happens a lot for neophyte writers going into a workshop class is because you've read lots of third person narration that does various things with point of view, that kind of is flexible with the point of view, like most of the 19th and first half of the 20th century third person narrators do. You go into workshop and you do that, and you kind of don't have full control of point of view. It's a tricky technique, and you get scolded for what's called head hopping. Head hopping is when you switch point of view randomly for no good reason, where you're losing focus and you're kind of baffling the reader. People who are trained as writers now are taught very early, don't head hop, and the solution to this is to stick very strongly to a very specific point of view. There is a simple solution. There is a simple set of ways to do point of view, and they stick to them and they execute them superbly. It is very clear whose point of view we are in the 100,000 Kingdoms, and in the Goblin Emperor. Le Guin and Tolkien don't head hopping. Well, they do something like head hopping, except they know what they're doing. They will switch point of view in random ways. Now, if you're reading A Wizard of Earthsea, it is clearly third person narration. A lot of the time, it feels like close third person, or it's called third person limited, where we have one point of view character. We're in that character's head. We're with Ged. We're riding with Ged. We know what he knows. We know what he feels. We have access to his interior mind, except when we don't. We almost never have access to anybody else's. But let me point out a few things. The first and last paragraphs of the novel are in a much more distant point of view. It's a kind of frame that tells you this is a story of long ago. Um, I mean, it's literally one paragraph each way. Where Le Guin starts, the island of Gaunt, a single mountain that lifts its peak a mile above the storm-racked Northeast Sea, is a land famous for wizards. From its towns and high valleys and ports, skip ahead. Of these, some say the greatest, and surely the greatest voyager, was the man called Sparrowhawk, who in his day became both Dragon Lord and Archmage. Okay, telling us all kinds of stuff. Spoilers are also a narrative cushion. We know Ged's going to make it because he's going to be famous one day. This is a story, as the second paragraph tells us, about Ged before he is famous. The last paragraph also skips way ahead. The rest of the time, we are mostly with Ged, but but Le Guin can play tricks. I want to point out two of them. I'll also say early on, she can kind of get a little bit into other people's point of view. We get into Ged's aunt's mind a little bit. We know what she's thinking about him. Some characters, we never have access to what they're thinking. We don't really know what's up with, we can only see what Vetch is doing. We know what he's feeling from his facial expression, what he says. Jasper is not accessible to us. The teachers on Rook Island are not accessible to us. And um, on page 85 in this edition, we're in chapter 4, near the end of the Loosing of the Shadow chapter. Get has recovered and he's been sent off for the next stage to the Imminent Grove to work with a master patterner. And it's said no spells are worked there. The place itself is an enchantment. Sometimes the trees of that grove are seen, and sometimes they're not seen, and they're not always in the same place in part of Rook Island. It is said that the trees of the grove themselves are wise. It is said that the master patterner learns his supreme magery there within the grove, and if ever the tree should die, so shall his wisdom die, and in those days the waters will rise and drown the islands of Earthsea, which Segoy raised from the deeps in the time before myth, all lands where men and dragons dwell. But all this is hearsay. Wizards will not speak of it. Then who knows? Okay, we're with Ged so closely, we know his secret name. Okay. In the future, when he's a figure of legend, people will know his secret private name. Almost none of the actual characters in the book use or know the name Ged. Ged knows it. Ogian knows because he gave it to him. Vetch knows because Ged shared it with him, but most people do not. And Jasper doesn't know. If you say, Jasper, what's up with Ged? He doesn't know who Ged is. He knows Sparrowhawk, right? That use of Ged's private secret name is either, or both, massive historical distance or close intimacy. You're with Ged because you're with Ged. Most of the time we're with Ged, we know as we feel. So let me show you a little shift. A little shift. Also in chapter 4, if you have the edition I ordered for you, the recent edition, um, turn to page 71. This is actually a moment in the beautifully rendered disastrous spell casting where he tries to summon, where he successfully summons someone from the dead, um, and then loses control. He had read the runes of this spell of summoning in Ogin's book 2 years and more ago, and never since had seen them. In the darkness he had read them then. Now in this darkness, it was as if he read them again on the page open before him in the night. But now he understood what he read, speaking it aloud word after word, and he saw the markings of how the spell must be woven, with the sound of the voice and the motion of body and hand. We are inside his mind and seeing how he is experiencing these things. And an exceptional experience we would not otherwise have access to. And there's a tiny shift as we move away from being inside Ged's head as he casts the spell to being more or less in the point of view of the other boys watching him. The other boys stood watching, not speaking, not moving unless they shivered a little before the great spell was beginning to work. Ged's voice was soft still, but changed with a deep singing in it, and the words he spoke were not known to them. He fell silent. Suddenly the wind rose roaring in the grass. Ged dropped to his knees and called aloud. Then he fell forward as if to embrace the earth with his outstretched arms, and when he rose he held something dark in his straining hands and arms, something so heavy that he shook with effort getting to his feet. The hot wind whined in the black tossing grasses on the hill. If the stars shone now, none saw them. That last sentence is totally about point of view. There may be stars, but no one in this grove can see them. We've moved from seeing the event through Ged's eyes to standing back a little outside him, as if to embrace. What is he doing? Why is he doing that? What is happening? We are now a little bit further back with the other boys watching something that nobody understands, but we don't get direct access to Ged's bafflement. These choices are artistic choices that writers are making all the time. Le Guin and Tolkien, in a different way, use a very fluid approach to point of view, moving the camera further and back all the time. Watch them do it. It's worth learning from them.